Apologist Jacob Pando takes on the late Christopher Hitchens. And no, this is not going to go well for Jacob, is it? But how badly can Jacob fail? Pull up a seat and let's find out. It's been a while since I looked in on Jacob Pando, and unfortunately, he hasn't gotten any better. Granted, none of the religious have. And when the apologists think that they have a new and interesting argument to make, you can be sure that they simply misunderstand the subject material, because coming up with new arguments for their religion is not something that the religious are very good at, and Jacob is no exception. So let's watch Jacob humiliate himself once again, as he fails in pretty much every conceivable way. If there was an afterlife, Hitch would be rolling on the floor laughing. Let's go take a look.
Hello YouTube, Jacob here, and I want to go over a statement made by an atheist in one of my videos. This statement is an objective assertion, and it goes like this. Whatever can be asserted without evidence can be dismissed without evidence.
That's not a statement. That's a quote from Christopher Hitchens, who originally wrote it in an article in Slate in 2003. It's often called Hitchens' razor. It comes from a Latin proverb which was commonly used in the 19th century, which loosely translated said, "What can be freely asserted is freely dismissed." It is meant to be a stronger version of Sagan's extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, instead applying it to even non-extraordinary claims. It's just common sense. It means that any claim made unsupported can be rejected as such. We don't have to seriously consider any proposition for which no supporting evidence is presented. It doesn't surprise me that Jacob is entirely unaware of this, but let's see how far down the fail rabbit hole he goes.
Alright, now I just want you to keep in mind that this assertion in and of itself is claimed without evidence, and therefore, according to its own logic, it can be dismissed without evidence.
It's not an argument. It's an epistemological razor stating that the burden of proof regarding the truthfulness of any claim rests entirely with the one who makes the claim. If the burden is not met, the claim is unsupported, and thus its detractor need not argue further in order to dismiss it. Anyone with any kind of basic philosophical grounding knows this. It's kind of sad that Jacob doesn't.
Alright, now it is a flawed statement, and I'm going to give you 2 reasons why. Alright?
Oh, this ought to be good. He doesn't even understand what the razor is, what the point or purpose of it is, and he's going to tell us why it's wrong. Sure, Jacob, go ahead and embarrass yourself.
The first reason is that it assumes that the human perception is all-knowing when it comes to a claim. Okay?
No, it does nothing of the sort. It says that if you want me to take your claim seriously, then it rests entirely on your shoulders to show that your claim is reasonable or valid. If you can't do that, then I have no reason whatsoever to take your claim seriously. And as should be no surprise, the religious hate this because they've got nothing and they know it. So in debating with the non-religious, they have nothing to present, and the debates go nowhere because they have the entire burden of proof. Now you'll notice that the religious hate the burden of proof, and they spend a lot of time trying to shift it.
So just imagine a court case, for example, where you have a defendant and a jury, alright? And it's the jury's job to decide whether the defendant is innocent or guilty based on the evidence.
No. A defendant is considered innocent until proven guilty. It is the jury's job to decide if they are, in fact, guilty. If the prosecution doesn't prove their case to the satisfaction of the jury, the defendant goes free. If the prosecution showed up with unsupported claims about the guilt of the defendant, the case would be thrown out and the defendant would walk. This is a perfect example of Hitchens' razor, not a refutation of it. But let's see Jacob keep failing.
Now, much of the evidence provided in a court case is based on testimony, on testimonies, much like the Bible is based on testimonies in order to support itself, all right?
Not so much, because you can't prove that the Bible is actually made up of legitimate eyewitness testimonies. In fact, every shred of evidence that we have shows that the Gospels are anonymous, not written by the people whose names appear on them, and are almost certainly not written by eyewitnesses. It's like going into a courtroom and finding random people off the street who can't be proven to have seen anything that happened giving contradictory testimony. No one is going to take it seriously, nor should they.
So, let's say in court cases where there is no video evidence, no photographic evidence, but we have to go by the basis of individuals who witnessed the event, those cases pretty much mimic what the Bible does for itself. It's a compilation of testimonies, all right?
Not even close. Because you actually have to prove that these people are eyewitnesses to the actual event, which with the Bible you can't do. The court system doesn't work on faith, it works on evidence. The prosecution putting random people on the stand to lie about things doesn't make a difference, except, well, they'd go to jail for contempt of court. It doesn't actually prove the guilt of the accused.
But going back to my main point, the human perception of claims made by individuals is limited to space-time because, first of all, as individuals, we weren't there at that time or in that place, all right? So we have to go by what others tell us and what other evidence that's provided, whether it be physical or logical, all right?
Only insofar as we can ascertain that the testimony supplied is reasonable to accept as true. We can go look at mythology and find all kinds of tales of gods and goddesses and ghosts and things like that, stories told by people who claim to have experienced them personally, and we don't take any of them seriously. Why? Because they don't stand up to any kind of critical scrutiny. And if Jacob was serious about this point, then he'd believe all the claims made in all the religious books, because just about all religious books make these kinds of claims. But he doesn't, which means he doesn't really believe what he's saying. This is just an ad hoc rationalization for his particular religious beliefs and his particular holy book, because he has a vested interest in that, and only that book.
Secondly, our technology is increasing. Just before the 1950s, they didn't have DNA testing, all right? So now that we have DNA testing, we can now see that many of the crimes committed in the past were wrongly executed. Individuals were wrongly charged for crimes that they didn't do, as well as other people getting away with crimes that they did do, all right, because we didn't have the technology.
And that has what to do with anything? Unless he wants to claim that DNA can exonerate Jesus or something stupid like that, technology really has no impact on the claims that he's making. DNA can't prove that a non-eyewitness was an eyewitness to an event that, for all we can tell, never happened.
So this claim that anything without evidence can be dismissed without evidence assumes that we have the technology needed to be able to make certain that those claims are wrong. All right?
We don't have to prove the claims wrong. You have to prove them correct. It's not our job, it's yours. And all decisions are provisional, pending further evidence down the road. If technology improves to such a point that we can prove that any of these stories about Jesus are true, then we will revisit them and make a further determination based on that new evidence. But that time is not now. Jacob is just assuming that the stories are true and will be eventually vindicated. I don't care about his assumptions, I care about his demonstrable facts. When it's proven, fine. Until it's proven, no.
So, there's technology, there's the problem with space and time when it comes to the human perception, all right? And another thing with time, we don't know what evidence could pop up in the future that supports the claim. To utterly dismiss the claim without allowing enough time and reason to progress to be able to prove the claim is ignorant, all right?
Like I said, all decisions are made based on what we know now, not on what we might know in the future. Come back when you have evidence, because until you do, we're not interested. You're not disproving Hitchens' razor at all. You're merely confirming it.
Yeah, maybe you can just push the claim to the side temporarily, but to claim that you can dismiss it right off is plain foolish. All right?
You really don't understand how logic and reason work, do you? All decisions are provisional, based on the current state of the argument. Your claims about the Bible right now, your evidence for the Bible right now, your arguments for the Bible right now. And right now, all of them are faulty. They are unsupported. Therefore, we are rejecting them right now until you can bring us something better. And the problem is, the religious don't want to wait. They have nothing. They know they have nothing. And let's be honest, the future doesn't look promising for them finding anything better down the road. So instead of saying, well, we've got nothing now, we'll come back when we do, they just keep pretending like we ought to take them seriously now and hope that they're right about the evidence that they think might be right around the corner. No! Just no! That's not how this works.
So, guys, tell me what you think about my argument against this absurd claim, and you have a blessed day.
It's stupid. It just betrays, once again, Jacob's absurd ignorance of logic, reason, and pretty much everything else. He doesn't know how the court systems work. He doesn't know how history works. He doesn't know how evidence works. He just blindly believes because it makes him feel good, and when he sees something that he thinks he can twist to his own purposes, he leaps to it without knowing why it actually works against him. Because all he's done here is to show that skeptics are perfectly correct in rejecting his unsupported and irrational claims. We do so for cause. We do so because he's got nothing to present to show that his ideas are worth seriously considering in the first place. Just like if the prosecution walked into court with faulty testimony, no corroboratory evidence, and no reason to think that the defendant was actually guilty, the case would rightfully get thrown out. It doesn't matter if they think evidence might be found someday. We don't punish people for something that might happen someday. It's put up or shut up. And the religious have nothing to put up, and they don't know how to shut up. But they don't want to leave us alone until they can prove their claims. They want us to believe it now, on the off chance that someday, maybe, we might be able to intellectually justify the belief. But as I keep saying, that's not how this works. It has never been how this works, and it will never be how it works. This is why Hitchens' razor works so well, because it keeps us from buying into absurd claims made without support. Because if you can't prove your claim, then I have no reason at all to take it seriously. None at all. And neither do you. And neither does anyone else for that matter. And those that do, those people have serious mental deficiencies. That kind of describes the religious to a T, doesn't it? And that's nothing to be proud of.